Alrighty, I apologize that the surface is a little too big to show you the whole thing, but I did want to share with you that I do carry this surface on my website. You can also get it at michaels.com, and occasionally it's listed for sale on Zulily. I don't know if you're aware that you can order interesting painting surfaces off Zulily. The only problem you have with that is you never know if they're going to have them in stock, if you do it for a class or not. So your safer bet would either be michaels.com or me. Keep in mind, I'm a small business. I don't get the discounts that the larger corporations get, so my prices might be a little bit higher than michaels.com, but it's the best price I can give you. So anyway, I wanted to show you that this is a great piece because you can remove this chalkboard part, and it's very easily done. All you need is a small screwdriver, and you just undo these 4 screws on the back, and I like to keep them in a little bowl so hopefully I don't lose them. And another great thing about this surface is, and I haven't done this yet, but it's a great idea, I think, and not just because I thought of it, but you could also cut extra pieces for this. The way you'd only have to buy the first initial surface, and you could just change them out. So hopefully I'll come up with some more designs on this, and we'll be able to do that. Anyway, let's get the pattern onto our surface. I've made a photocopy onto some vellum, and to make it easier, I've cut it out into the shape. But you'll also notice that I cut off about a ½ inch off the top. There's no pattern up there that has to go, and if you line up the bottom, you're good. Bottom and sides, you're good. So that way I could just tape it with some painter's tape, and I'll be able to flip it back and forth. So we're going to put our pattern on. I used white graphite, and if you read in the directions, you'll see this. I ask you to just put the pattern on for the horizon line, which is right above the watermark line, and then the water's edge. So we are going to work on the water and the sand first, and then we'll go back, put the pattern on for the other elements of the design. So you want to make sure your pattern's on your thing straight, because you don't want your horizon line to be wonky. So when you put the pattern on for the water's edge, you're going to just go right through those other elements, the fence posts and stuff. And there we go. All right, cool. We are ready to paint. So the first color we're going to use is antique white, and we're going to work on the sand first because it's under the water, so that only makes sense. And I'm going to take a large flat brush. This is an 18. You could use even larger. And I'm going to just kind of quickly give my sand a coat. It only really needs 1 coat. You want to try to keep paint off the side edges. I do that by laying the brush a little bit flat, you know, and pulling off the edge. And that keeps the edge pretty clean. If you get paint on there, it's not that big a deal. You can take some waterless hand sanitizer and clean it up lickety split. So we're gonna just give this a quick coat of antique white. Doesn't have to be solid. Seeing that black background through there is fine. It's going to add to the different values of the sand. Okay, and if you're like me, I'm an impatient painter, and also I only have a few hours of video on this that I can record. I'm going to use my Ranger Heated Craft Tool, which I got off Amazon, and I'm going to dry this really quick, because I don't like to wait for paint to dry. I like to help it along. So, and this, it doesn't get so hot that you know, you can't have your hand under there. It's not going to burn the hair off the back of your hand or anything. And it's quiet. It doesn't make all that noise like your hair dryer does. So that's pretty dry already. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to stipple on our sand with sand, the color sand, which seems quite appropriate. So you need to get out your stippling brush, a rather large one. I'm using a Langnickel short round sable and a size 14. And I like these brushes to use them to stipple with and to use my snowman, make my snowman, and to dry brush with. So it's a pretty versatile brush for me. Normally in stippling you would take a lot of the paint out. You're not going to take as much paint out because you want to be able to lay it down on here. And so I'm just going to stipple all over, but I'm not going to make it completely solid. I'm going to leave some of that antique white showing through, and I'm going to leave some of that, the darker background that shows through. You want to try to avoid getting hard edges. So that would mean that you'd stipple off here and then come back and kind of blend it in. So everybody has good days and bad days of stippling. Luckily, this isn't like fur on Santa or something, so you don't have to worry about it too much. And I'll be honest with you, the sand's going to look kind of ugly for a while. It's going to go through puberty, but it will look great once we get towards the end of our project. So I always say this to my class, trust me, I have not lied to you yet. That I know of anyway. So, almost there. So it doesn't have to be real controlled or anything, you just want to get some different values in there. Okay, I washed my brush out, but you really didn't need to. So I'm going to add some sand back into it. But what I want to do is I want to stipple some a little darker areas into the sand. So I'm going to pick up some burnt umber on my dirty brush. And when I say dirty brush, I mean you still have the paint in it from the last layer of color that you put in. So I put some sand back in here, and I picked up some burnt umber, and I'm going to kind of blend it a little bit on my palette here. And then I'm going to choose some areas that I want to darken a little bit. So I'm going to darken, oh, I got some water in there. That's okay. I'm going to darken here and here. And maybe here. And so I'm just kind of wiping out my brush, and then I'm going to soften those edges a little bit. Now this is not what the sand is going to look like, so don't panic. Let's get this colored back up, my little fingerprint. But you don't want it to have really hard edges. So get in there and just kind of blend it out. So you see we have some different values, and on the camera it looks really, you can really tell where they are. But that's okay, this isn't finished. There's still stuff to go on top of it. So remember that it doesn't look like what it's going to look like when we get done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dry this again. And I'm going to get the color honey brown. Alright, pretty dry. And what I'm going to do with honey brown is I'm going to float some shading down the sides of the sand and across the bottom. So get my larger flat brush, my number 18. And we're gonna corner load some honey brown, blend it out. And I'm going to float some honey brown on the sides. And I like to use a mop brush. If you're not familiar with a mop brush, it helps you kind of soften and blend your floats out. So I like anything that's going to help make my floats look better. So, and as you can see, I'm a pity pat floater. I don't do floats all in one long thing. I like to pity pat them and blend them in and walk them out of corners, and so across the bottom here. And when I talk about walking it out of a corner, I kind of make the corner round this float here and walk the color back. And you see, with the mop, I can kind of soften and blend the edges of that float. So we're going to come back. This is just like the underwear of the sand. This is just to get us started and get a base on there. And we're going to come back later and stipple in more highlights and add some more shading after we get the other elements of the design on the thing. So I'm going to take a little break, and I'll be back and we'll work on the water. Okay, back. And we're going to work on the water now. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to give the water a coat, or two, probably two, of baby blue. And when you paint the water in, of course you want to be careful of the horizon line, and you also want to try to use horizontal strokes when you do it. And again, if the background shows through, that's okay. It's going to add to the depth of the water. My brush has a little too much water in it, but it'll be okay. It's always okay. Again, try not to get it down on the side edges. And I turn my projects a lot. So you may be watching me paint upside down every once in a while. Some people use a turntable. I use that on smaller things. I used to be a paint holding the piece in my lap person, but since I started doing videos, I've had to learn how to paint staying up on the table. Oh, the sacrifices we make, right? Okay. So, coat number 1. I'm going to dry it again. Shouldn't take too long. Let that shine go away. All right. And coat number 2. Again, keeping it horizontal. So see, it's not opaque. I can still see some of the black kind of shining through. And that's exactly what I want. okay. This makes me want to go to Hawaii again. But not in the schedule. Probably if I whine enough, though, I could get my husband to agree. All right, coat 2. And I will dry this again. So it's okay if it's streaky, really, because we have a lot of stuff that goes on top of it. It'll be okay. All right, the next color we're going to use is Ocean Blue, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to float Ocean Blue down the sides of the water and across the top of the water. Here again, you want to walk that color out into the corners, out of the corners, not into the corners, but out of the corners a little bit. It's a soft float. You don't want it to be real harsh, dark. So down the sides. I'm going to mop that out, soften it a little bit. And then we're going to go across the top, across the horizon. This surface grabs the paint a little bit more than a normal wood surface would. So I have to reload my floats a little more often. But once you realize that and make a allowance for it, it's not that big a deal. Picked up some crud. Okay, so there we go. I'm going to dry that real quick. It's already starting to look a little bit like a beach. Okay, I'm going to take my flat brush, the one that I used to float with, and I'm going to corner load again with Ocean Blue. And then I'm going to streak some Ocean Blue horizontally across the water. And there's no certain place you have to put it. You just want to get some streaks of blue in there. You can see that. So let's dry that. I dried the side floats because I didn't want to wipe them out when I did this streaking. All right, and we're going to pull in warm white. And we're going to float warm white across the front edge of the water. This can be a pretty wide float. And it can be kind of heavy. You can always refloat it if it's not heavy enough. So I'm going to go along this front edge of the water with a float of warm white. I'm also going to streak just a warm white, just like I did the ocean blue. All right, looks a little like water already. So let's dry that. And of course, your best looking area of water is probably going to be the part that we cover up with a fence post. That's just the way it works. But it's good practice. And it's easier than trying to paint water around fence posts if you just do it all and then put the fence posts on top. So now what I want to do is I want to take some warm white, a float of warm white, again pretty heavy, and I'm going to float, especially in, let me turn it back this way so I can show you, especially in this area here. This part doesn't get covered up by fence posts or grass so much, so probably that's where I want to focus. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to float some warm white out onto the sand. So that's kind of like the wave is kind of coming out onto the sand a little bit. And I probably want to do 2. And I'll probably do some back here just for the practice. Okay. All right. Now, I'm going to take a small round brush or a liner brush. This is a number 4 liner. And I'm going to pick up warm white, quite a bit of it, on my brush. And I'm going to start tapping in what I call the foam. And it's going to go along this edge of this float. And you see I'm tapping it in. It's varying widths, and it's not real, what do I want to, it doesn't, it's not all the same. It's not, you know, the same width or anything like that. I guess what you could do is think like a little wave lapping up on the shore. You know, it's not all the same length or width or whatever. So basically you're just going to go through and tap in foam on these little waves that you made that are out on the sand. And you're also going to tap it in on the edge of the sand, on the edge of the water. Okay. This is just an easy way to do waves. You could get way more complicated, I'm sure, but who wants complicated? On this piece especially, it's just a nice little piece that you can put out. Okay, now I'm going to pull the real piece over here so you can see. But I'm going to continue tapping. Oops, let's back up a little bit. So I'm going to continue tapping in, and I'm going to go back into the water a little bit to give the idea that there are little waves breaking out in the water too. So you want to make sure you have a picture out and just tap some more. Think like a wave. So as you can see, I'm not being real particular about how I tap, or the only thing I'm particular about is trying to keep it as horizontal as I can. And as they get back farther into the water, they're going to become a little bit smaller, a little bit more just kind of tapped squiggly lines. But you want to make sure you get enough in there so you get the idea that there's waves back there. Okay. And even in this area that's going to be covered up with fence posts, don't forget that area too. Now I'm going to be a little more deliberate here, because sometimes when the foam washes up on the shore, it kind of leaves, I want to say, like patterns, like areas where there's foam, like a checkerboard, or I don't have the right words to describe it, but there might be areas that are just plain water, and then there's foam all around. I don't know if you can understand what I'm saying. I think you can see it in the picture a little. So I think I'm getting close to being done here. Maybe just a little. When you get into the background, you can just kind of stay on the tip of your brush a little bit more. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. Maybe just reinforce this a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to come back with some honey brown, and I'm going to float under this front edge of this water with honey brown. So I'm floating the honey brown on the sand next to the foamy water's edge. And so you just kind of get a little squiggly in there. And we can come back and we can tap some more foam on top of that. See what that does? That helps quite a bit. I'm going to walk this corner out a little bit. And the other side also. Excellent. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my round brush and I'm going to make a little wash of baby blue, which was the color we based our water in. And it's going to be a fairly thin wash, not a lot of color. And I just want to wash some blue into these open areas here where the water is onto the sand, just to give the idea that there's water in that wave that's coming forward. Alright, let's let this dry. And I'm going to put the pattern on for my fence post. So I will stop and put the pattern on, and then come back and we'll work on some fence posts. And don't worry, sand's not done. We still have stuff to do to it. Okay, got the pattern on for those fence posts. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint them in with sable brown. And I used a number 10 flat. It was like the perfect size for these fence posts. So you can do them in pretty much 1 or 2 strokes. So let's give ourselves the first one. And yes, I ran out of paint, but no big deal because I can just come back from the other end. And they don't have to be perfectly straight. I say that because I painted them kind of crooked, but so quick and easy fence post right there. So if you have a number 10 flat, a number 8 would work. Just flatten it out a little bit. And you don't have to worry about it being opaque again, because we're going to put a lot of stuff on top of it. Let's do fence post number 3. And here we go. Number 4. And number 5 is kind of like half a one, and it has a slanting edge on the top. It broke. Okay, 5 little fence posts. So let's dry those. Okay, we are going to float some shading on the sand on either side of the fence post with burnt umber. You just want to set them out in front of the sand. So all I'm taking is I'm using my number 10. Normally I would use a bigger brush to float. And I'm just going to float on the sand up to the water's edge with burnt umber. And let's get my mop out. Oops, that's not my mop. This is my mop. And soften those floats a little bit. And we'll float up the other side. Or down the other side. Don't worry about the bottom because that gets covered up with grass. Go on a little more shading on that one. Not that much, but it will make it work. There we go. And on the water on either side of the fence post, we're going to float with ocean blue. So and that includes going across whatever foam is there. And this one, on this small one, it means you're going to go across the top of it also. So, just quick floats. They don't have to be perfect. There's a lot of stuff that goes on top of them too. So, just get some deeper color back there so that the fence posts are sitting in front of the water and not on the same plane. Oops, I got into the sand. Got carried away there. So on some of these, basically you just end up filling in that space in between. All right, cool. Now that popped them out a little bit. I think you could see that. Let's dry it real quick. All right, again, with my number 10 flat brush, the one I used to paint the fence post, I'm going to pick up some antique white, which was the very first color we used. Don't put water in your brush because we want this to be kind of dry. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the top of the fence post, and I'm going to pull color down, and it gets kind of streaky and dry brushed, and that's exactly what I want. So on each fence post, start at the top, pull color down. You don't use a lot of pressure. That helps you get the dry brush look. But we're just going to start at the top and pull that antique white down the length of our fence post. Okay. All right. Let's let that dry. Okay, and you didn't have to wash out your brush. If you did, it's okay. But we're going to pick up some warm white, and we're going to do the same thing, starting at the top. Now the warm white, well, it does go all the way down. Normally a highlight, well, you wouldn't go as far as the first one, but this one, it can go all the way down. So I'm going to start at the top again and pull down. And I want to still be able to see some of the sable brown, some of the antique white through this. So each fence post, again, you'll be really good at this by the time we get to that little one. And the little one. All right. I think those look pretty good. They look like they're kind of weathered and aged. Okay, I'm going to take a liner brush. I think this is, I don't know what number this is. Anyway, it's a smaller one. It's probably a 1, because 1s are my favorite. I'm going to take some burnt umber, a little bit thinned down, not a wash, but a little bit thinned down. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to line that cut edge of each board across the top and down the left side. So that gives it the idea that it has dimension, and you're seeing the side edge a little bit. And it doesn't have to be straight or all the same width. If it is, that's okay too. It doesn't really matter. So I did it across the top there. And then I'm going to come back and go down the side, the left side. All the way down. And I think you can see that. You get the look of the cut edge that way. So we'll go do that on all of our fence posts. Don't worry about the bottom. I know it looks kind of weird, but we cover it up with grass, so it's okay. And you can see I get a little thick and a little thin, a little, maybe a curve here and there. That's perfectly fine. And I don't say that just because it's my thing. And okay, so now we're going to take some thin, a little bit thinner burnt umber, and we're going to line some cracks. And these are, they look really nice when you do them from like this top here. And then line a couple on the rest of the board, but do some cracks. Through your wood. So make them look even older, more battered. Okay. All right, cool. Now, we're going to line the wire that goes around our fence post. If you need to put the pattern on, you can stop and do that. I'm going to use this little 30-aught. No, this is a 20-aught, but I have 30-aughts too that I like. This is the one I happen to grab. Liner. It's got a short handle, which I like, but I'm going to use that. I'm going to thin down some black paint. Lamp black. And I'm going to just, let me see where it's, I'm just going to line some wire around each little fence post. I'll get a little close there so you can see. So you don't want to line them up like little soldiers. You want to make some of them a little higher on the post. And then I just kind of squiggle wire in between each wire that's around the post. And then here, I'm just going to kind of squiggle the end where the wire broke off. And I'll do that on this other side too, although you won't be able to see it as well because it's black on black. And then I'm going to go down. Now this post was broken, so it doesn't have the top wire. So I'm just going to put a wire around here and then connect it to the other fence post wire. And again, squiggle in between so they're connected. Squiggle a little end on that wire. And this one you can squiggle a little end too. And I'm just going to wipe out my brush and I'm going to pick up some warm white. And I'm just going to kind of haphazardly line some highlights here and there on the wire, just to make it stand out a little more. You can see there's no rhyme or reason to where I'm actually doing this. It's kind of hit and miss, but it just helps you see the wire a little bit more. And here. All these little things that just help bring it to life. Alright, I have someone at my door, so I need to stop for a minute. Alright, I'm back. Just door to door. And it seems like there's more and more of that. So I'm going to take my flat brush and some burnt umber, and I'm going to float shading above and below each wire on the boards and at the base of the fence post. So that's burnt umber shading above and below each wire and at the base. And that just makes the wire pop away from the fence post a little bit. So it's not, again, not on the same plane. I keep talking about planes, keeps making me want to go to Hawaii. So I'm going to go across the bottom here. And then above the wires. So just a quick little float. Don't have to make it a career. It doesn't take much color to pop that wire out on top. Alrighty. Wrong way. One of these days I'm going to label this thing so I know which way I'm going. Okay, it's looking pretty good. We're going to work on the grass that's at the base of these fence posts. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take some evergreen and our liner brush, and we're just going to stroke on some blades of grass with thinned, not too thin, but thinned evergreen. So think like grass. And let's see here. Oops, a little too much. I'm going to go out away from the posts a little ways here. I don't know if you can see that. Evergreen is kind of transparent, but I still like to use it as a base, as the dark background on grass and stuff. So here again, stroke quickly. It doesn't have to be a very thought out thing. It's grass, so think like grass. Kind of grows sometimes in clumps and bunches. And again, this is just the underwear of the grass. We're not done with the grass, so you don't have to get it all in there right now. We have other colors to go in. And I'm also going to do a couple little tufts of grass out here below the fence posts a little bit. Okay, and the next color is avocado. And again, the same thing, we're just going to stroke another value of color onto this grass. And you don't have to stroke in the same, on top of a blade. You can just kind of add its own little tufts of grass with avocado. You're not quite as much grass, so. And then finally we're going to stroke some margarita. And you want to keep this not a lot of it. It's a very bright color, but enough to define the grass a little bit more. And if your avocado is still wet, that's okay, because then the margarita will blend into it a little bit. Okay. All right. So we have grass there. We are going to work on this tall grass that's in the corner here. And if you need to put the pattern on, you can. But basically it's just, you have to just think like the tall grasses that wave in the wind. And you're going to start them, I would probably start here with the long ones and work down kind of into the corner. But don't make it come all out of the corner. You want to spread it across a little bit. It would look kind of funny if it came out of just one spot. So let's see. I'm going to go with my smaller liner brush. And the first color I'm going to stroke on is some avocado. And this I'm going to use to just kind of set in the direction of the tall grass. And it's got a slight curve to it. It's not real curvy. Okay. So you see I'm working my way down the side, and I'm just very gently stroking in this tall grass that waves in the wind. And as I get to the corner, then the grass starts to get shorter. And I'll turn the corner and just stroke some very short, and it also starts to curve more horizontally. Like it's kind of laying down a little bit. And I also want to take this avocado and just here and there, I'm going to pull a blade of grass. I'm going to stop and come down and make a point. So it's like a bent grass. And you see that. Don't think it will focus on there. There we go. So not too many of these, just a few here and there. And you can do a couple where you just kind of stop and give yourself a little bit wider blade. Not whiter, but wider. Okay. All right. And then we're going to take some margarita. Again, that really bright color. And we're just going to line some highlighting on some of the blades. Especially the ones that we widened or the ones that we bent. We want to line some highlighting on the bent part. But I'm just going to go through and kind of stroke some highlighting in there. I could probably stand to make this a little bushier, but it'll be all right. It will be okay. As I come back in and make it a little bit fuller with some avocado. Okay. Actually, I made a mistake. The highlighting is actually moon yellow because I didn't want this grass to be the same color. So wherever I told you to do margarita, just go back and stroke some moon yellow on there, just to give it a different color. It's not that big a deal that there's margarita in there. That adds to it too. So we'll just get some moon yellow here and there. There we go. That makes it look a little different than this grass over here. We don't want it to be matchy-matchy. Okay, and now I think you can see them in your picture, but you're going to take your liner brush and you're going to tap some little leaves, or I don't know what they're called, little pods, on some of the longer, thinner blades. So like here, just tap a little bit of an end on that. And pick one up here. I think I did 4 or 5 of them. So just tap on maybe one down in here. And maybe one over here. Okay, we have the little buds or pods or something on there. And then you just want to tap a little highlight on those with moon yellow. It's not a lot, just a couple little dots so they stand out a little bit more. Now there are those larger brushes of 3 of them, and what I'm going to do with those is I'm going to line them on with honey brown first, and you can put more if you'd like. I just stuck to 3, so I'm just going to take honey brown and I'm just going to line that little brushy grass in there. The ends of it kind of curve a little bit. And 3 of them. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to line some shading on those with burnt umber. So down here, I'm going to line some burnt umber and a little bit across the back of the brush a little bit. So from the base up. And this is kind of hit or miss too. It's not a definite line. It's just, I want to say like scratching some color on there. Okay. And then the same with moon yellow. You want to line a highlight. I'm going to turn this around. And I'm going to line a highlight, especially on these tips a little bit. Not so much on the stem, but on the brushy part. Okay. So there we go. And you want to let this dry a little bit. We're still not done with the sand, so don't panic. And then I'm going to take and I'm going to float some evergreen shading down this side and across the bottom of this grass, just to anchor it onto the piece. So it's not like it's floating. And you want to walk it in the corner a little bit. And all right, that helps a lot. Okay, now we're going to come back to this sand, and we're going to kind of build the sand up in little piles or drifts at the base of this grass. So you want to come back with your stipple brush. I'm going to use a little bit smaller one. I'm going to use a 12, and I'm going to start again with antique white, and I'm just going to, and it's going to look kind of bright, it'll be okay. I'm going to tap in that little bit of sand that's piled up next to that grass. Don't make it a straight line, get it, you know, little different hills and stuff. Okay, and I'm going to take that out a little bit, and I'm going to widen that. And here again, I want to soften it a little bit on the edge. Okay. And the same thing with this little bunch of grass. You want to give it a little hill that it's popping out of. And I'm just going to kind of, oops, a little too much paint there. I'm just going to kind of add another little tuft here. Just to give the sand a little dimension. Okay. And then I'm going to pick up dirty brush, pick up a little bit of the color sand, of course, and tap a little bit brighter grains of sand across the top of this hill. And here again, you want to blend it back down a little bit. And all the other little hills that you added, you want to do the same thing. I'm going to dry brush just a little bit of lighter sand. Okay, and then I'm going to pick up a little bit of warm white, and this is not, you're not going to do a lot. You want to keep it real light, but across the very top. Okay, and your other little hills. And here again, dry brush a little bit of it here and there, just to give the sand a little bit more interest and variation. Okay, I'm going to go back to my wave a little bit. I kind of want to add a little bit of a wave along the edge here. I don't know why, I just felt like I needed to do that. Okay. I'm going to take my flat brush And with honey brown, I'm going to float. I'm going to turn this over. And I'm going to float shading wherever there are little hills. Here's where your mop brush will come in really handy. So you can blend out that float a little bit. So all I've done is kind of reinforce the fact that these little tufts of sand, these little, I don't know what do I want to call them, little piles of sand are set behind. I'm also going to float that a little bit along the bottom edge of that grass just to anchor it a little bit into the sand, give it a little bit of sand color. Okay, cool. I think that's looking pretty good. All right. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the pattern on for my lettering. So I'm going to take a step away for a minute while I put the pattern on for the lettering, and then we'll be back and we'll do some lettering. All right, I have the pattern on for my lettering. Hopefully this is a good lettering day for me. Kind of like sometimes you have a good floating day, and sometimes you have a bad one, and I have good lettering days and bad lettering days. So I'm going to use my little 30-aught or 20-aught liner, a small one, and I'm going to paint the lettering on with warm white, and this is probably going to take 2 coats. So just take your time. And just watch where you're going, not where you've been. And try not to stress. No, not too much caffeine before you try to do this. Okay, so I'm probably going to fast forward through this just because there's not a lot of talking I need to do while I do this. So don't be amazed at how fast this goes. Alrighty, I turned the camera off while I did the second coat because there was really no need for you to watch me do that all over again. I'll tell you, it's not a really good lettering day for me, but it's okay. I'll live with it. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add some like clouds into the sky a little bit, and these are very soft and sheer. Just kind of like scrubbed across the sky. You're actually going to use your finger to do this a lot. So I'm going to take my brush that I use for stippling, and I'm going to pick up just a touch of paint and a lot of water into this brush. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of scrub some paint on there, and I'm going to take my finger and kind of blend it out a little bit. So it's kind of streaky across there. Okay. The important part is to not have too much paint. If you have too much paint, then you want to wipe it off and start over. Okay, so you're just getting little streaks. To act as kind of wispy clouds in the sky. And I'm kind of going around the letters, not into them too terrible much. I say that as I get in between the letters there. But you can see just a little bit of the hint of a cloud in the sky. Okay? And then we're going to just add a couple of those little faraway birds, you know, the little seagulls into the sky area. And you can put them wherever you want. I don't think you need to put the pattern on. And those are just those two little curves. Add at least 3. Okay. All right, cool. So, there you have it. What you're going to do now is you're going to let this dry, and then you're going to give it a couple of coats of spray varnish. I like to use DecoArt gloss spray varnish. And then you're going to reassemble your stand. Slide your sign in there and screw it in and set it out for everyone to see. Thank you so much. Again, if you have any questions, you're welcome to email me. My email address is in the pattern packet. I hope you've enjoyed this project, and I'll see you again around Halloween time. Thanks so much.